Let's move on though. How about we switch gears, insha'Allah ta'ala? The long awaited book of marriage. So, we're going to again go over Abu Shuja, insha'Allah ta'ala. And I want to just stick close to the text. So I won't, inshallah, go into details. And then maybe we'll see if we finish the whole book of marriage. Maybe we'll do a level 2 and we'll pull out one of the explanatory books. Or maybe we'll do something else. We'll see. Allahumma hdina wa saddidna. Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-huda wa sadad. The author says, may Allah have mercy upon him, Kitabun Nikah, the book of marriage. وما يتعلق به من الأحكام والقضايا, and what is related to it of rules and judgments. Marriage. What's the marriage? What's the book? Kitab, Kitab refers to a major segment of a larger work, segment of knowledge of a larger work. The Kitab will have abwab, babs, chapters, and fusul, sections, and furu', and divisions or branches, and masail, cases. The book of marriage and nikah here. The nikah here refers to the contract that includes legalizing intercourse, yani under conditions. If we don't say under conditions, it means still though. A contract, a particular contract, a contract that has a particular procedure. This means has conditions. And this word nikah also means in Arabic language sexual intercourse. So it means the marriage contract and it means sexual intercourse. Like in the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, Isna'u kulla shay'in illa nikah. Do anything while the woman is menstruating except nikah. You know that hadith? We learned that hadith in the book of purification. We learned that hadith in the book of purification. Under the prohibitions, what's prohibited for a menstruating and postpartum bleeding woman? What's prohibited for a menstruating and postpartum bleeding woman? Sexual intercourse. Or is it enjoying anything between her navel and her knees? So according to a saying, it's just the sexual intercourse. Because of that hadith, it uses this word nikah. So this is Kitabun Nikah, the book of marriage. وَمَا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ, and what is related to it. And you notice that the definition that I mentioned to you of the marriage contract, that it is a contract that includes legalizing intercourse. So I didn't mention in the definition like having a family and being in love and things like that. Those things go with it though. But this is the point. This is the aim of this contract. وَمَا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ مِنَ الْأَحْكَامِ, and what is related to it of rules, وَالْقَضَايَا, and judgments. This part, وَمَا يَتَعَلَّقُ بِهِ مِنَ الْأَحْكَامِ وَالْقَضَايَا, and what is related to it of rules and judgments. That's missing from some copies of Abu Shuja'. So in some copies, it's just merely Kitabun Nikah, book of marriage. What's related to it of rules and judgments? Like what? Like rules pertaining to having more than one wife. How will you be fair? What's the rules? If you follow those rules, you will be fair to your wives. And such as the rules of iddah, Isn't it that a woman sometimes has to observe an iddah before she can remarry? Those rules are found here in this book. In this book of knowledge, you find the rules of iddah in the book of marriage. And like when the woman, I'll say, is rebellious, she goes into a state of rebellion, nushuz. There's rules there. She is preventing her husband from being intimate with her, for example, such as running away. She ran away from him, or things like this, and other cases. And so the author says, النكاح مستحب لمن يحتاج إليه. Marriage is recommended for whoever needs it. Remember Abu Shuja''s goal? What's his goal? His goal is to produce the ultimate summary. That's what he told us in the introduction of his book. Yani, that's what it was requested of him. So he wanted to fulfill this request. So his book is very summarized. It's more summarized than the summary of obligatory knowledge when they are talking about the same subjects. This has more subjects than the summary of obligatory knowledge, this whole book. But comparatively, it is more, its words are briefer. But sometimes this summary of Abu Shuja is too brief. The explainers of Abu Shuja would mention. Here he says, marriage is recommended for whoever needs it and can afford it. If he needs it and he can afford it, that's for a male. As for the female, affording it is not a condition, because what does she have to pay? It's enough that she needs it, and then she would tell her guardian, for example. But for the man, when I say it's enough that she needs it, means for it to be recommended for her. For the man, it's not enough that he needs it, but also that he can afford it. And needs it means has desire. So then, the one who does not desire marriage, see how appropriate the word nikah is? The one who does not desire nikah, then he can spend his time in other things, male or female, like studying and worshiping. But the one who needs nikah, then if it's a woman, it's enough just only to need it. And if it's a man, then to need it and afford it, be able to afford it. Or else let him fast. And if he's going to fast, he needs to do that for some days too. Sometimes that's his case, not one day, so that his body will weaken. وَيَجُوزُ لِلْحُرِّ أَنْ يَجْمَعَ بَيْنَ أَرْبَعِ حَرَائِرِ. It is permissible for the freeman to marry 4 free women at once. To merge here. And يَجْمَعَ بَيْنَ, to merge 4 free women. So it says, to marry 4 free women at once. So I'll leave it like that. Or to gather 4 at once, free women. وَلِلْعَبْدِ بَيْنَ اثْنَتَيْنِ. And for the slave to marry 2. So that's clear. A slave man can have 2 wives. A free man can have 4 wives. Free Muslim man, this is Muslim man here. What about a kafir man? If a kafir man married more than 4, is it valid? Yeah, it's valid. If he married more than 4, it's valid. And if he converts, then he has to release whatever is more than 4. So he has to choose some to release, because he can't have more than 4 as a Muslim man. وَلَا يَنْكِحُ الْحُرُّ أَمَةً إِلَّا بِشَرْطَيْنِ. A freeman does not marry a slave woman except under two conditions. Yani, a freeman does not marry a slave woman. Why? Because his baby is going to be a slave. Illa bishartain, except under two conditions. Adamul sadaqil hurrah, not having the dowry of a free woman, or more broadly, not being able to get a free woman. Maybe there aren't any, or maybe he can't afford any, or maybe none of them will marry him. And the only thing he can do is get a slave woman. Then he has an excuse. وَخَوْفُ الْعَنَتِ, and fear of fornication. Or it means fear of being punished for fornication. So then he marries a slave woman. Also, there's this, what they call stigma that comes with marrying a slave woman. Yani, if you want to consider some social standards, then it's better for a freeman not to marry a slave woman. وَنَظَرُ الرَّجُلِ إِلَى الْمَرْأَةِ عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَضْرُبٍ. The author says, there are 7 categories of a man's looking at a woman. وَنَظَرُ الرَّجُلِ, a man's looking إِلَى الْمَرْأَةِ, at a woman, عَلَى سَبْعَةِ أَضْرُبٍ, is of 7 kinds, 7 types. أحدها نظره إلى أجنبية لغير حاجة. The first of them is, it says, for him to look. Yani, the first of them is his looking. إلى أجنبية, at a foreign woman, at a marriageable woman, not a non-marriageable relative, without need. And don't forget, need is usually, in the words of the scholars of fiqh, less than an emergency. Haja, a haja is an errand, something you want to do. It's less than barura, something urgent or an emergency. He says, أحدها نظره إلى أجنبية لغير حاجة. The first of them is his looking. All right, I want to improve this, inshallah. Is his looking at ajnabiyah, a foreign woman, a strange woman, meaning a marriageable woman. Yes, meaning a woman, not one of the non-marriageable relatives, not one of the non-marriageable relatives. And who's included here? Included here is the cousin. Ajnabiyah includes the cousin. لِغَيْرِ حَاجَةٍ, without need. Okay, that's less than an emergency. So what did he say? فَغَيْرُ جَائِزٍ, that is not permissible. So that's what he said, and we don't say that. If he's just looking at her face and her hands without desire, then he does not have to have a need. That's correct judgment. He does not need a reason to be able to look at her face and hands without desire. He is not obligated to turn away from her face or her hands without desire, and she is not obligated to cover her face or hands. But the wives of the Prophet were obligated to cover their faces. The believing women other than the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were not obligated to cover their faces. And it's not haram to look at their faces without desire or their hands. So this statement is incorrect. May Allah have mercy on the author, rahimahullah ta'ala. وَالثَّانِي نَظَرُهُ إِلَى زَوْجَتِهِ أو أمته. The second is his looking at his wife or his slave woman. Meaning here his unmarried slave woman. His unmarried slave woman. فيجوز أن ينظر إلى ما عدا الفرج منهما. He says it is permissible for him to look at everything other than their vaginas, or we can put the word anything. And this is also not correct. Rather, there is no restriction here at looking at anything, but it is disliked. Rather, looking there is disliked. And Aisha reported that she never saw the Prophet's private organ, and he never saw hers. This, it being disliked to look there, for the man to look there, it's not disliked the other way, though, for the woman to look, for the wife to look, for example. His unmarried slave woman, as for his married slave woman, then she's going to be like what the author is going to say in a moment. وَالثَّالِثُ نَظَرُهُ إِلَى ذَوَاتِ مَحَارِمِهِ أَوْ أَمَتِهِ الْمُزَوَّجَةِ. The third is his looking. The third is his looking at the bodies of his unmarriageable kin, or his married slave woman. His married slave woman, and the way it's worded here, muzawwajah, means she was given in marriage. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's just pause here real quick and look at some scenarios. So we're talking about a slave woman here. And this slave woman here is married also. Okay. So how would a woman become a slave? She might be born like that. So that would be that her mother was a slave and her father was not the master. If she was born like that, then her mother was a slave and her father was not the master, or else she would have been free. If her father were the master, she would have been born free. So she's a slave woman. And then in that case, how would she get married? Her master would have to give her away. Okay. Or else, if she weren't born as a slave, then it means she became a slave. So if she became a slave, how could she become a slave? Then we need to look. If she were a Muslimah, if she were a free Muslimah, then there's no way she can become a slave. So she must have been a kafirah then. So if she were a kafirah, how she became a slave? Yani, unless she was already a slave before. She was a slave before, and then the Muslim got her. But let's say she wasn't, then if she were free, how she became a slave because she got captured in war? What if she was married? The slavery breaks her marriage contract. The slavery breaks her marriage contract. When does the slavery kick in? From the moment she gets captured. She doesn't become the slave of the one who captured her per se, but she becomes a slave at the moment of capture. So this means her marriage contract is broken, but she's not married now. So how will she be married after that? Then also she's going to have to be given away in marriage. And who's going to give her away? Her master. So I just wanted to look there with you. Oh, amatihi al-muzawwajah, or his married slave woman. But this word married here doesn't very well represent this word muzawwaja, as if to say his married off slave woman, his married off slave woman. والثالث نظره إلى ذوات محارمه أو أمته المزوجة. The third is his looking at the bodies of his unmarriageable kin or his married off slave woman. فيجوز فيما عدا ما بين الثرة والركبة. It is permissible to look at everything or anything other than what is between the navel and the knees. That's spelled right, navel there? Okay, that's accurate. For those unmarriageable kinfolk, by the way, don't forget 5 categories. Here they are. You're going to put that in your notes. Mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and niece. Mother, sister, daughter, aunt, niece. A handful right there, 5. Mother, sister, daughter, aunt, niece, those are categories. There's different types of mothers, different types of daughters, different types of sisters. And the aunt, yani, I'm talking from perspective of English language, different kind of aunts. Yani, not your uncle's wife, though. She's not a real aunt. So I'm not going to go into all that right now. He's going to talk about those. There's a chapter for these ones. We'll come upon them. Mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and niece. There's not different kinds of nieces, though. Okay. So then, according to this, I'm going to tell your family member, your mother, or your sister, or your daughter, or your aunt, or your niece, and she's in the house, and she's just in the house, but she has short shorts on that show some of her thigh above her knee. So you're going to say to her, you need to cover between your navel and your knees. If she came out without a shirt on, well, you don't have to say anything here. But maybe in some cultures it's not normal. Religiously, there's no problem. وَالرَّابِعُ النَّظَرُ لِأَجْلِ النِّكَاحِ. The fourth is looking for the sake of getting married or for the sake of marriage. Yani means you're interested in her. He's interested in you. فَيَجُوزُ إِلَى الْوَجْهِ وَالْكَفَّيْنِ. It is permissible for him to look at her face and hands. So according to the author, this is a reason. Then it's not haram. But if he doesn't have any reason, then it is haram. That's not correct. What's correct is he does not need a reason. So this fourth type is the condition is not really a condition. The scenario is not a condition. The scenario of being interested in or curious or entertaining the idea of marriage. Then he can look at her face or her hands. It's not a condition. He can look anyway without desire. Looking at her face is enough to give him an idea of her beauty. And looking at her hands is enough to give him an idea of her health. And it's not a condition for him to look at her hair. And if he wants to know about her hair, then he can have someone, a woman, for example, look at it for him. And then tell him. That's not haram. Or, yani, if a woman even just described her own hair to him, there's no sin here. It's not a sin for him to know the description of her hair. It's a sin for him to look at it if she is non-marriageable woman. If she is a marriageable woman. To look at it if she is a marriageable woman. وَالْخَامِسُ النَّظَرُ لِلْمُدَاوَاةِ. The fifth is looking for treatment. Yani, that's clear. فَيَجُوزُ إِلَى الْمَوَاضِعِ الَّتِي يَحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهَا. It is then permissible to look at the spots, al-mawadi' that he needs to see. Yes. And even if we remove these words to see, it is then permissible to look at the spots that he needs. I think that's clear. Yes. So here, important case. The doctor. So she's going to go to a Muslim female if she's able to. If she can't, she can go to a Kafir female. And there's a list of doctors that she goes through if they are all available. And also, without regarding who is more proficient. Also, without regarding who is more proficient. If there were numerous kinds of doctors available, without regard to who is more proficient, then she's going to go for her awra to be seen. She's going to go to a Muslimah. This Muslimah is going to go to a Muslimah. And Yani, even before that, actually, who's she going to go to? Her husband. If he can treat her, she'll go to her husband. A treatment that requires looking at her awra. Even before she goes to a Muslimah, she's going to go to her husband if he can treat her. So if he can't, then she's going to go to a Muslimah. And the last one on the list is a male, kafir, pubescent, with a penis. Last one on the list. But it is permissible for one to see the more proficient doctor. It is permissible for someone, yani basically to skip someone else for the sake of seeing the more proficient doctor. Yani, in other words, it's not obligatory to turn down the more proficient doctor for his gender. But there is still also the issues of khalwa too. Right now, we're not talking about khalwa, we're just talking about seeing the awra. There's also the issue of khalwa that means privacy, being alone. Yes. If you have a question, go ahead and ask, inshallah ta'ala. وَسَادِسُ النَّظَرُ لِلشَّهَادَةِ. The sixth is looking for testimony, for being a witness. Like you saw the baby coming out of her vagina, and you looked and saw the baby coming out of her vagina, so that you could testify later about her giving birth. So looking for testimony. أو للمعاملة, or doing dealings. This one here, or doing dealings, that's what he says. فيجوز النظر إلى الوجه خاصة. Then it is permissible for him to look at her face specifically. It is, and sometimes it's permissible to look at the private part to testify. The private part, not just the face. You're going to look at the private part, not just the face. That for the testimony, not for the dealing, for the testimony. أو للمعاملة, or for dealing. So Abu Shuja, he put this dealing and looking for dealing and looking for testimony, he put those together in one category. Here, this one, mu'amala, doesn't have to be here. He says, فَيَجُوزُ النَّظَرُ إِلَى الْوَجْهِ خَاصَّةً. It is permissible to look at the face, specifically, in particular. That's what he said. Also, we don't agree with that for the dealing. There's something here in this sentence. When it comes to the dealing, it's not a condition that it's a dealing to be able to look at her face. That's one thing. And when it comes to looking for testimony, it's not the matter of looking at her face here. It's a matter of looking at her vagina, for example, so that you can testify. والسابع النظر إلى الأمة والسابع النظر إلى الأمة عند ابتياعها. The seventh is looking at a slave woman upon purchasing her. Looking at a slave woman upon purchasing her. فيجوز إلى المواضع التي يحتاج إلى تقليبها. It is then permissible to look at the parts that he needs for inspection. Yani, that's approximate translation there. Like he's allowed to yani, look at her. Her hair wouldn't be covered, for example. What's very exact scenario here? I haven't learned one from a teacher. So I'm not going to say like some image I might have seen in media. And maybe you've seen also of supposedly a Muslim slave market, for example. So I need to hear from a teacher. And we should stop there. There's something I wanted to mention for you, though. Yeah. I just want to mention a case for you. This is separate from the today's lesson. I want to remind you about the judgment of striking. Striking. You know what that means? Like when some people, they basically picket their boss, refuse to work. And it's like they're holding the business hostage. So this is haram, just so you know. So be careful here before you praise something or support something that is really an injustice. Why this is injustice? Very easy, obvious thing here, actually. There's some things that wallahi makes me scratch my head about humans. But really I understand. When you don't follow Islam, you're not going to be straight. And you're going to contradict yourself in some ways. Some people would strike, they would say, we're working without a contract. What do you say to him? You say, why are you working without a contract? So he might say, my contract ran out. So repeat your question. So why are you working without a contract? Your contract ran out. Why are you still working? So you don't have a right to pick it like this, to strike. Oh, Jannah, I just saw your question here. I'll answer it for you, inshallah. Subhanallah. So that's a very simple thing there, isn't it? Or someone might say, but I want fairer wages. So you say to him, did you agree to something when you started working? So he's going to probably say, yeah, I did. So you say, okay. So you agreed to that contract, didn't you? So how are you going to strike now? How are you going to do that? You agreed to it. Why don't you see your contract all the way through? Finish it. And then, since you're unsatisfied with the terms of your contract as they stand, finish your contract and then renegotiate. So then someone might say, yeah, that's it right there. It's the renegotiation process. Okay, so you don't accept the terms? Say, no, I don't accept the terms. Say, okay, then don't agree. You can't lock the business down and hold the business hostage because you want him to agree to your terms. He has terms too. Maybe he'll say, I want fairer wages. So you say to him, let me ask you a question. If you needed to hire somebody and you could hire one person for less money, which one you gonna, and let's say they're gonna do the same job. Let's say they're gonna do the same exact job, but you can hire one for less money. Which one you gonna hire? Don't you sit here and lie in my face now. So you cannot strike like this. You cannot like shut someone's business down like that. This is complete injustice. There's no way here. Actually, subhanallah, I ran into some advocate for what do they call those? SubhanAllah. What's the group that orchestrates the strikes? What do you call that? Union. So I ran into some lady. She was, yes, union. Barakallahu feekum. I ran into a lady who was like an advocate for a union and some union. She was like signing papers on the streets, like stopping people talking to them. So I thought to myself, this is a great opportunity for me to practice on someone. So I stopped and talked to her. So she started talking, telling me about whatever she was talking about for the union. So, and how, people be working without a contract. So I said to her, why would somebody work without a contract? She was so shocked. She was so shocked. And like that, I was just talking to her. Now I don't remember all of the conversation. But this is how I was going with her. Because I was just like practicing with her. Because I had the opportunity to talk to someone who really believes in that and think it's the right thing. And so, and it was so easy really to pull apart all of what she was talking about. And she got so frustrated with me. MashaAllah. You have some questions here. Let me see. Question: can you give an example of what's not a good enough reason to have a doctor check your aura? Yeah. Uh, well, sometimes the checkup, I'm not going to say always every checkup, but some of them. Maybe sometimes the checkup, it warrants that. But all other times does not, for sure, it does not warrant exposing the aura. Like when, how you need to just like think a little bit when you see yourself in your own situation. So you'll be in some situation. He's gonna say, "Okay, here, why don't you just take off all that stuff and put this on?" She said, "Why? Why have to do like that?" Or, for example, and this worked. Just so you know, once when someone needed uh, some X-rays, those were chest X-rays, lung X-rays, I believe. So what they will do, tell the woman take her shirt off. So a man, he can take his shirt off and still be covered from his navel down. They're going to tell the woman take her shirt off for this. So, when some person stood up for himself, for when the sister was defended in the case and said to the doctor, do it with her shirt on. She had just like she took off all the other shirts, just she had thin shirt though, still under. It's a tight shirt that she had under her clothing, but her aura still covered. Her sleeves covered everything, but just tight shirt, thin. So he said, "Okay, we'll try it," and it worked. It was perfectly fine. So then became clear that don't need that. And side note, look at the athletes, female athletes. They don't need to uncover so much. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. But also to help clarify the answer to your question, there's going to be other times when you're going to know that you are able to expose your aura here to the doctor. And when we say doctor here, that still includes the doctor of the same gender. Don't forget. What I'm talking about is not only for a doctor of opposite gender, even for same gender. It's not permissible to expose the aura without an excuse here to someone. That's why your first choice is going to be your spouse. If your spouse can treat you, your spouse is going to do it because your spouse is able to see your aura without restriction, without condition. Yeah, maybe sometimes woman goes to the gynecologist. So does she need? I don't even know what all the stuff they do there. Only have maybe delusions about it. So does she need that? Question: is it haram for a Muslim married woman to talk to another man romantically while married if they are not speaking of anything haram like stirring desire? I do not conceive well that it's romantic without stirring desire. Those don't go together for me. Okay, here. I think you can unmute yourself now if you need to. So, what school is that you have to have a reason for looking at hands and face? That's what some Shafi'is said, maybe some Hanafi said too, but it's not true. It's not correct. It lacks evidence. We are able to argue here. Some person's going to say, nah, An-Nawawi said, for example, and you're not even nowhere close to the level of An-Nawawi, so therefore, that's another case, brothers and sisters. We're going to say, okay, fine, An-Nawawi said, but there's proofs. Let's discuss these proofs here if you want to. So he might be the type of person to say, nah, we don't need, nah, because we're not at that level. So then that means you're probably over his level then. That one, you say, no, we're not even at that level. Then you're already over his level there. If you can't really talk about the proofs, I mean. You said, okay, instead of romantically, intimately, I've heard a lot of criticism about women who get married to another man swiftly after their iddah because they were talking to another man during their marriage. Well, for me, though, that still means stirring desire intimately. So it's not permissible to talk intimately like this, Yani. For me, the not stirring desire doesn't fit here. So you can adjust the question if you want to. But as it stands, that part doesn't fit for me. So it's not going to be permissible to talk to her romantically or Yani, quote unquote intimately. You said, I've heard a lot of criticism about women who get married to another man swiftly after their iddah because they were talking to another man during their marriage. Well, you know, somebody's always worried about what somebody else is doing, though. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. You said, are the requirements of what makes a woman nashiz different in each school, or is it the same? I don't know. I haven't learned about this in any other madhab. But just back to that other statement real quick here. Said, because I've heard a lot of criticism about women who get married to another man swiftly. So that's one thing, marrying a man swiftly, that's one thing. Swiftly after the iddah, that's one thing. But talking during her first marriage or while she was married, that's another thing. So let the people be concerned with their own business. Don't be worried about anyone's business, brothers and sisters. Don't be concerned about anyone's sins. Rather, what you're going to do. Bismillah. Uh, if you have a friend, you think your friend's going to do something that's not wise, advise your friend. Or any person you think is going to do something unwise, advise them. That's what you can do. That's as opposed to what? As opposed to like dwelling on what somebody else did and what's going on in somebody's life and how is somebody doing this and that and you said, I'm just curious about what is haram in that situation. What's haram is stirring the desire. So, mashallah. If there's no other questions,